Of course. Here's Section 1, approximate 1,500 words, of the story, written as a clear, focused narrative. The hum of the station was constant, a low pulse like a distant heartbeat, but Dr. Elias Voss had long stopped hearing it. He stood alone in the observation dome of the Odyssey spire, his gaze fixed on the dark void beyond Saturn's rings. He'd spent years chasing theories dismissed by his colleagues as fringe science, signals lost in cosmic noise, patterns dismissed as natural phenomena. But last week, something had changed. Something had responded. It came from beyond the outer rim, just past the Kuiper Belt, an artificial pulse too rhythmic, too deliberate to be chance. The signal wasn't broadcast in any known language, but it resonated with a harmonic sequence that mirrored the Fibonacci spiral. It wasn't just a beacon, it was an invitation. He hadn't told the others. Not yet. The data packet he received also contained coordinates, spatial data for an uncharted moon orbiting a rogue planet between star systems. The planet had no name, only a classification number, and it hadn't been on any maps until last year's deep sky scan picked it up drifting in the interstellar dark. But the moon had a structure, massive, angular, half buried beneath its ice-crusted surface. Elias had submitted a request to dispatch a scout probe, but bureaucracy dragged, and the risk level alone guaranteed months of debate. So he did what he'd always done. He went alone. Now, aboard the Icarus Veil, a modified long-range reconnaissance vessel, Elias was 8 hours from intercept. His only companion was Halley 3, an adaptive interface drone with rudimentary conversational ability and an insufferably polite tone. Halley ran diagnostics while Elias reviewed the landing protocols for the 5th time, his thumb hovering over a decades-old photograph of his father, once a lead physicist on the failed Europa excavation project. "This is what you wanted, old man," Elias whispered. The Icarus Veil dropped from FDO with a gentle shudder. Ahead, the rogue planet loomed. Its surface cracked like a dying ember, spewing plumes of frozen gas from deep tectonic wounds. But it wasn't the planet he was here for. Orbiting close to its northern pole, the moon hung in silence, cloaked in ice and shadow. And nestled near its equator, barely distinguishable from the terrain, was the anomaly. It wasn't a natural formation. Even from orbit, Elias could see the unnatural symmetry. Towers too angular, hallways aligned with solar vectors, and structures that resembled cathedral spires buried beneath centuries of glacial sediment. His heart quickened. "Halley, begin descent protocols. Full atmospheric analysis and thermal sweep," he said. "As you wish, Dr. Voss. Caution. Environmental parameters suggest unstable ground conditions and extreme radiation fluctuations." "Noted," he said, strapping in. "Initiate descent." The veil pierced the moon's exosphere in less than 2 minutes, landing with a soft hiss as ice vapor swirled around the hull. Elias unlatched his restraints, grabbed his thermal suit, and activated the internal oxygen supply. Outside, temperatures dropped below -200 Celsius, but his suit would hold. He hoped. He stepped onto the surface with reverent hesitation. The air was thin, unbreathable. The terrain cracked under his boots like fragile glass. Before him rose a structure, half sunken, yet monumental in architecture. Alien, yes, but there was a strange sense of intention in its design, as though it had been built to be found. Elias approached the nearest archway, his breath visible inside the helmet. The metal, if it was metal, was smooth and warm to the touch, etched with markings he didn't recognize. Not language exactly, but symbols spiraling in a pattern that made his head throb if he stared too long. He activated Halley's scanner. "Material composition unknown," the drone said. "Resonance frequency matches anomalous signal detected prior to departure." "They're connected," Elias muttered. "This whole place is a transmitter." As he moved deeper into the outpost, his suit lights flickered across walls that bent at impossible angles. The architecture seemed to shift as he walked. Corridors that weren't there a second ago, doors that blinked open silently as he neared them. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt dormant. After 20 minutes of careful exploration, Elias entered a chamber larger than any he'd seen. The ceiling arched into darkness, and the walls glimmered faintly, like circuitry pulsing with life. In the center stood a pedestal waist-high, and above it floated a sphere of light, gently humming. Hallie scanned the orb. Scanning, unable to determine composition. Energy output is low, but stable. Recommend non-contact observation. Elias ignored the warning. He reached out slowly, palm open. As his fingers neared the sphere, it pulsed once, bright and sharp, and his vision blurred. There was a rush, a low hum like a choir just beneath hearing, and for a second he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He stood on a shore of stars, beneath a sky of cascading light. Shapes moved in the distance, tall, elegant beings of shifting geometry, and one of them turned toward him. It didn't speak, not with words. The message came like a memory not yet lived. You were always meant to come. Then it was gone. The light dimmed. Elias staggered back, nearly collapsing. Dr. Voss? Hallie's voice crackled through the suit comms. You experienced a biometric spike. Are you well? I saw them, Elias said, his voice trembling. They showed me something. What did you see? I'm not sure. Not yet. The orb now floated inert. Whatever it had to share, it had done so. As Elias turned to leave the chamber, something shifted again in the hallway behind him. The walls were no longer cold and lifeless. They breathed, slowly, deeply. A faint glow now pulsed beneath the floors. The structure was awakening. Suddenly, Hallie let out a sharp burst of static. Dr. Voss, I'm detecting movement. Elias froze. From the corridor ahead, a soft, rhythmic clicking echoed. Footsteps, but not human. They sounded like claws tapping on glass. He backed into the chamber, pulse racing. Hallie, deploy visual field. A thin arc of blue light shot forward, illuminating the hallway. It was empty. Then, out of the corner of his eye, a flicker. He turned. Still nothing. He was being watched. They had let him in, but that didn't mean they wanted him to leave. Elias to Icarus Vale, prep for emergency evac. He said, heart hammering. No response. Hallie, confirm uplink status. Uplink unavailable. External signal blocked by localized interference. Of course. He took a step back toward the hallway, one hand on a sidearm. Not that he believed it would help. Then the lights dimmed. The air grew colder. And from deep within the outpost, something answered. Not a sound, not a roar or a screech. A presence. It filled the space like a storm front rolling in. Not evil, not hostile, but ancient and aware. Elias swallowed the rising panic. There was no turning back now. And somewhere inside, a part of him didn't want to. Elias moved slowly through the corridor, his gloved fingers trailing against walls that seemed to shiver at his touch. The hum beneath the floor had grown louder, vibrating up through his boots like a second heartbeat. Every few steps, the outpost would shift, walls realigning, doors disappearing behind him. It felt less like a building and more like a living maze, responding not just to his presence but to his thoughts. Hallie hovered close, its light scanning ahead, mapping the corridors in real time. But even its sensors were faltering. Environmental consistency compromised. Spatial orientation unreliable. It reported, recommend retreat to established safe zone. There is no safe zone, Elias murmured. This whole place is watching us. He turned a corner and stopped. The hallway opened into a vast atrium, domed and flooded with a soft blue glow emanating from veins of energy running along the walls. Giant glyphs, elegant, curved like script written in wind, spanned the ceiling, pulsing faintly. The air smelled faintly metallic, tinged with ozone. In the center stood a towering structure, like a console or altar, made of interlocking crystal plates. Elias approached it slowly. Unlike the pedestal from before, this one was inert. No floating orb, no hum, but its surface was etched with grooves, perfectly symmetrical, waiting to be touched. He raised his hand, paused. Biometric imprint detected, Hallie said without prompting. This interface is reactive. It's adjusting to you. Elias touched the surface. A sudden crackle of light sparked from beneath the glassy surface. Lines spread out like lightning frozen mid-strike. The grooves shifted and rose, reshaping themselves into a pattern. something familiar, a human hand. Before he could react, the console flared to life. The air shimmered, and the atrium dissolved into darkness. He was no longer standing on the outpost floor. He was standing in a memory that wasn't his. The world around him was alien. Skies of violet haze, oceans that shimmered with silver, towering cities stretched into clouds, their spires bristling with light. Creatures moved through the streets, bipeds like men, but taller, more fluid, composed of radiant geometries rather than flesh. He saw them commune through pulses of light, shaping machines with thought, altering landscapes with gestures. And then came the silence. An event, unspoken but undeniable, fell upon their world. He felt it as a rupture, a great undoing. Stars collapsing, machines falling dormant. And then the desperate act. They built the outpost, not as a fortress, as a vault, a place to store their knowledge, their essence, a beacon for something or someone that could understand, that could carry it forward. You, the voice whispered again, though there was no sound. You are not the first to find us, but you may be the first to understand. The vision collapsed. Elias staggered backward, gasping. Hallie floated nearby, lights flickering. You vanished for 72 seconds, it said. Telemetry was lost. Vital signs unstable. I saw them, Elias said. Their world, their fall. Clarify them. I don't know what to call them. But they weren't trying to hide this place. They wanted it to be found. The console dimmed again, its grooves receding. Elias felt a pressure behind his eyes, like a memory being forcibly integrated. Knowledge flowed in schematics, patterns, even emotions foreign to him. He dropped to one knee, panting, overwhelmed. Then, through the echo of it all, something else emerged. A signal. Hallie, he said, breathless. Is there another source active? The drone blinked. Affirmative. New energy signature detected. Eastern corridor. Subterranean level. Without another word, Elias moved, guided less by Hallie than by instinct. The corridors narrowed, winding downward into older, darker parts of the outpost. The hum grew deeper, more resonant. At the base of a sloped tunnel, he found a sealed archway unlike the others, smooth and unbroken, no visible opening mechanism. He placed his hand on it. It shimmered and dissolved like vapor. The room beyond was cold. No glow, no hum, just silence and shadow. And in the center stood a second chamber, smaller, but clearly important. Its walls were circular, lined with pod-like constructs. Most were empty, except one. Suspended inside a transparent membrane floated a figure, humanoid, motionless, but not dead. Elias stepped closer. The figure was curled in a fetal position, surrounded by slow-turning streams of light. Its skin was iridescent, shifting in color. He couldn't tell if it was male or female, or if those distinctions even applied. The face was alien but not grotesque, serene, distant, impossibly old. Stasis, he said softly. They left one behind. Life signs detected. Hallie confirmed. Minimal but stable. Subject has been in suspension for, calculating, over 200,000 Earth years. Elias stared, struggling to reconcile the implications. This was no data vault. This was a tomb and a lifeboat. What happens if we wake it? He asked. Unknown. Suggest extreme caution. Elias raised a hand toward the pod. The lights in the room flared. The figure's eyes opened. He stumbled back as the membrane dissolved silently. The being hovered for a moment, then slowly descended, feet never quite touching the ground. Its eyes, black pools of infinite depth, locked with his. Neither spoke. Then a pulse, a wave of emotion, washed over Elias. Sorrow, relief, curiosity, and something else. Recognition. The being moved a hand, and glyphs lit up along the chamber wall. A projection formed, a galaxy map. Their galaxy. Dozens of points marked. One near Earth glowed red. Elias understood immediately. You were watching, he said. You knew we'd come. The being stepped forward. Its voice, when it came, was not sound but vibration, a core that echoed in his mind. We waited for one who could see, not just look, one who would carry what we lost. What do you want from me? The being turned back to the star map, to remember, to warn, to choose. The red point expanded, displaying solar flares, electromagnetic storms, and finally, a familiar blue planet. Earth, you've seen our future. The being didn't answer. Instead, it extended a hand toward Elias. Not demanding, not threatening. Inviting. He hesitated. Every rational instinct told him to turn back, to report his findings, to let others decide. But something deeper moved in him now. A knowing. This wasn't just discovery. It was inheritance. He took the being's hand. In a flash, the room vanished again. He stood in a flood of light, surrounded by a billion moments, thoughts, memories not his own. Knowledge flowed into him, of stars long dead, civilizations swallowed by time, technologies capable of reshaping reality. It didn't hurt, but it was overwhelming. When it ended, he was on his knees, gasping, sobbing. The being stood above him. Now you carry us. Elias looked up. What am I supposed to do with this? The being turned and began to fade, its body dissolving into particles of light. Return. Remember, the others will come. You must be the first. And then it was gone. The chamber dimmed. The hum faded. Hallie reappeared in the doorway, silent. Elias stood, unsteady. Something inside him had changed. Not just knowledge, not just memory. His perception had shifted. He felt time differently, space differently. He could still hear the frequencies of the outpost singing quietly in his mind. He turned and began the long walk back toward the surface. Elias stood at the edge of the landing platform, the Icarus veil looming silent behind him, its hull still frost-glazed from the moon's breathless cold. His visor was off now. Suit unsealed, the outpost interior had adjusted itself, its atmospheric composition shifting subtly, gradually. The air was breathable. The structure had been changing since his encounter in the chamber, responding to him, as though the awakening had extended beyond the entity itself. He could still feel it, not just the memories the being had shown him, but the weight of something imprinted in his mind. Patterns, visions, languages that had no words. The knowledge sat like a second consciousness, whispering beneath his thoughts. The being had not just shown him history. It had planted a seed. Hallie floated nearby, quietly recalibrating its sensors. The drone hadn't commented since the return to the upper levels. It didn't need to. Whatever logic its programming relied upon, it was now operating outside the bounds of predictable behavior. Elias understood. So was he. We need to send a transmission, he said. Hallie blinked. Uplink to Earth Command remained blocked by local interference. Recommend relocating to high orbit perimeter for signal stabilization. No, Elias said, not just a report. They won't understand what this is. They'll try to dissect it, contain it. What alternative action is proposed? He stared into the distance. The outpost no longer looked cold. Its walls pulsed softly, alive, waiting. I need to translate it, he said. Everything I've seen, everything they gave me. He returned to the central atrium, the same place he'd first touched the console. The moment his hand brushed the crystalline surface, the structure reawakened. Lights bloomed across the walls. Interfaces unfolded like petals. This time, Elias didn't flinch. He pressed his palm firmly to the surface and began. The interface responded in kind. Glyphs flowed like water across the console, and Elias instinctively reached for them, manipulating their form without understanding how he knew to do it. It was like remembering how to write in a language he'd never learned, like his hands belonged to someone else. Hallie recorded every moment. Data streams poured through its scanners, but most were indecipherable. The energy signatures inside Elias had changed. His biochemistry had altered subtly, synaptic acceleration, cognitive branching. His mind had become a conduit. For the next 12 hours, Elias didn't sleep. He didn't eat. Time folded around him as he worked. The outpost shifted to accommodate, producing new chambers filled with data interfaces, visual, auditory, even tactile. He could feel knowledge now, like texture beneath his fingers. He constructed a narrative, a record, Not just what had been given, but what it meant. The fall of precursors, the collapse of star systems devoured by entropy, the failed attempts to preserve intelligence through artificial means. They had tried everything: biological evolution, digital consciousness, even collective mind states. But each solution failed under the weight of its own perfection. What remained was memory, fragmented and preserved inside structures like this one. And Earth, humanity, wasn't the first species to stumble upon their ruins. Others had come. Most had failed to interpret. Some had tried to conquer. All had been changed. The message was clear now. Preservation wasn't about survival. It was about transmission. The act of giving what could no longer be held. "Hallie," he said at last, his voice hoarse, "prepare the relay. We'll use the Outpost's own transmitter." "Signal harmonization initiated," Hallie replied. "Caution. Unknown variables may affect local quantum field stability. I'm counting on it." The console rose again, now glowing with a deep amber hue. Elias input the encoded sequence, layered with sensory data, linguistic matrices, and a neural resonance pattern that could only be read by a mind shaped like his. Not a message in language, but a living archive. The moment the sequence activated, the Outpost responded in full. Energy surged along the corridors, and for the first time, the structure made a sound, a low, harmonic chord that resonated in his chest more than his ears. The pulse stretched outward, beyond the moon, into deep space. "It's done," Elias said, staggering back. The silence that followed felt immense. And then another pulse, not from the Outpost, from somewhere else. Hallie's sensors flared. Incoming signal detected. Directional origin, Glee's region. Estimated time of arrival, 14 minutes. Elias stared at the ceiling. A reply. Someone, something, had heard. His heart raced. He expected awe. Instead, he felt dread. "Hallie, status of the Icarus?" "Systems functional. Fuel levels at 84%. Long-range drive ready. We need to leave. Now." As they moved back toward the ship, Elias cast one last glance at the Outpost. The structure dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging his departure. Like a cathedral exhaling its last hymn. Once inside the veil, he powered up the engines. Hallie interfaced with the guidance systems, rerouting the NAV path away from the moon. "Target destination?" Hallie asked. "Earth," Elias said. Then, after a pause, but not to return, to warn. The veil ascended, breaking the upper atmosphere. Behind them, the moon grew small, yet the signal it emitted pulsed like a heartbeat, reaching farther now, calling out across the stars. 13 minutes. What if they're not like the one I met? Elias asked, what if the others, what if they're come to take back what was left? Hallie hovered in place, light steady. "Unknown," it said, as the veil breached into open space. Elias looked out toward the dark beyond. He wasn't alone anymore. Inside him, the archive whispered endlessly, unfolding new thoughts, memories, understandings he hadn't yet begun to grasp. He was the first, but soon others would follow, and not all would come with peaceful. The Icarus veil dropped out of hyperspace 2 days from Earth orbit, and Elias felt the pressure in his skull shift again, like altitude, like memory. The further he got from the Outpost, the quieter the voice became, not silent, but muted, distant, as though the knowledge he'd inherited had reached the edge of its container. It wasn't leaving him. It was waiting. Hallie's voice broke through the silence. Long-range communications array intercepting, encrypted Earthcom signal. Priority Alpha Black. Elias leaned forward in the pilot's seat. Decrypting relay. A burst of static snapped across the console, then resolved into an urgent voice. Female, tired, tense. "This is Command Overseer Renamakov. To any inbound Icarus-class vessel, identify and confirm cargo. We are receiving non-authorized transmissions linked to unknown deep space architecture. Repeat, confirm cargo origin. Respond immediately." Elias didn't move. He could see the trap forming, the data he carried. The presence inside him, whatever it was, wouldn't be seen as a discovery. It would be classified, dissected, controlled. Or worse, ignored until it was too late. Halley waited. Response. He muted the channel. New course, he said. Geosynchronous orbit over the Pacific Archipelago Relay Zone. Minimal satellite coverage. I'll drop there. That region is outside quarantine perimeter. Risk of interception by Earth Fleet Patrol is. Let them come, Elias said. They'll find me when I'm ready. The ship coasted into low orbit. Below, a stretch of emerald ocean reflected back the light of a too-blue world. It looked untouched. Untouched enough. Elias transferred to the escape capsule and launched it manually. Halley tethered behind him like a silent moon. Entry was rough. Heat sheared past the windows, and the guidance system blinked red more than green. But he hit water hard and fast, and when the hatch blew open, he was already swimming toward the dark shoreline. The jungle beyond the beach was dense and alive. Birds wheeled in the canopy. Unseen things moved just out of sight. Elias moved like a phantom through it, Halley drifting behind him. By nightfall, he found the old transmitter station he'd used during his early field work, half-eaten by moss, but still standing. He powered it up manually, and for several minutes it buzzed with half-dead electricity. Then the screen flared to life. "Begin transmission," he said. His voice was calm, but something inside him had hardened. He wasn't a man who had boarded the Icarus Veil. That man had believed in systems. He had trusted command. Now, he trusted the silence between stars. "I am Dr. Elias Wren, former lead exoanthropologist, Expedition Gamma 18. I am speaking not as a scientist, not as a soldier, but as the only living witness to what we were never meant to inherit." He paused, fingers flexing. The presence inside stirred, aligning with his thoughts. 70 hours ago, I activated a structure beneath the surface of Telios 3. Not a ruin, a beacon. What I encountered was not alien in the sense we expected. It was old, older than stars, older than what we define as time. It preserved not just technology, but consciousness, culture, memory, something beyond any measure of sentience we've known. He took a breath, steadying himself. I was chosen, not because I'm special, but because I was there, because I listened, and now I carry a piece of them inside me. It is not a weapon, not a gift. It's a mirror. He leaned closer. We are not alone. We never were. But that doesn't mean what's coming will be kind. Halley emitted a soft pulse. Incoming signal. 3 Earth Fleet vessels inbound. Ite, 2 hours. Drone scans indicate Class 6 personnel retrieval force. Elias turned away from the transmitter and stared into the trees. The night sang with distant insects and rustling leaves, peaceful only in the absence of understanding. He stood. "They'll try to contain me," he said. "Deconstruct what they don't understand." "Correct," Halley said. "Probability of force cognitive scan, 92%. Survival odds of host consciousness, negligible. They'll rip it apart," he murmured, "and it'll fight back." He reached into his satchel and removed the data crystal he'd formed aboard the Outpost, encoded not with text, but with something closer to thought. It shimmered in his palm, soft pulses echoing his heart. He set it on the console and began encrypting a deep-time broadcast sequence. Not for Earth, for space, for others. "You're sending it away?" Halley asked. "Not it," Elias replied. What they left in me." A long silence followed as the satellite system locked onto a deep space relay path. "Transmission ready," Halley confirmed. He pressed the crystal to the transmitter. Light poured into the machine. The jungle flickered. Somewhere above, beyond orbit, a signal began threading through the dark. Quiet, patient, infinite. When it was done, Elias turned and walked into the forest, Halley close behind. The Earth Fleet ships found the transmitter burned out, still warm, with only traces of the crystal's residue left behind. No body, no DNA, just static on every recorded frequency, a harmonic tone that seemed to unsettle all who heard it. Command called it a malfunction. Privately, they initiated Silent Protocol Omega. 2 weeks later, Report of identical harmonic tones began emanating from deep beneath the Antarctic ice, then from Martian relay towers, then from an unmanned listening post near Saturn's rings. Elias Wren was gone, but his message had arrived, and something was listening,